Does having a shoe rotation reduce the likelihood that you get injured as a runner? Let's find out. So back in 2015, Malisu and a bunch of other researchers came together to find out if wearing one pair of shoes or having multiple pairs of shoes reduce the likelihood that you experience a running-related injury. And now for a little context here, somewhere between 30 and 80% of all runners are going to experience a running-related injury on any given year. And now depending on who's defining running-related injuries, some people may say just missing one bout of running or one session of running because of a pain is a running-related injury. Or some people will define it as missing a running event due to an ache or a pain. So there's not total agreement in what makes a running-related injury, but either way, we know that distance runners get hurt a lot. And so anything we can do to reduce the likelihood that we experience these injuries, we want to take advantage of that. And so is shoe rotation one of those things? So let's find out. So these researchers looked at 264 subjects who took 22 weeks to report their running habits and any related injuries into a system called TIPS, T-I-P-P-S. Don't worry about what it stands for, but basically anytime they ran, they entered in how much they ran, what shoes they were wearing, etc. And anytime they got injured, they indicated where they were injured, what they were doing, etc. And at the end of this, the researchers looked at the people that wore more than one shoe and the people that wore one shoe to see who got injured more. And so the main result that we really care about from this study was like who are injuries lower in. And overwhelmingly, injuries were lower in the multiple pair runners. And this was to the effect of they were 39% less likely to have an injury. That is significant. So they found that people who were switching between two pairs were less likely to be injured than one pair, and they found that people with 3 and 4 and 5, and subsequently the more pairs of shoes you rotated through, the less likely you were to get injured. Now, I don't recall what the extent of this was. Like, if you have 100 pairs of shoes, are you just not going to get hurt? No, like that's just not how it works. However, they find that switching up shoes likely distributes the forces in your leg differently than if you just repetitively wear one pair of shoes, because we know most running-related injuries are overuse injuries or repetitive strain injuries. We're using the same tissues over and over and over. And a stat that backs this up is that 80% of running injuries occur at or below the knee. So we have the musculature and the tendons and the ligaments at and below the knee are getting hurt 80% of the time. The other stuff that goes on is like glute med tendonitis, and even a little bit of low back pain shows up in the top 10 of injuries, running-related injuries. But not only did the researchers find that switching up footwear reduced your injuries, they also found that people who had lower injury rates and wore multiple pairs of shoes were more likely to actually take part in other sports as well, or what we could consider cross-training. And so, once again, we're distributing the forces differently by taking part in other activities, not just running, doing this one activity. And so they also found that people who had other sports mixed into their running also had lower injury rates. And so the science checks out on this one, and once again, it's one study, and it was a self-reported study, which we know does have some limitations. Self-reporting can be inaccurate. But either way, the researchers indicate clearly that running-related injuries get reduced as you add more shoes into your rotation. So at the very least, if you can, hold on to an old pair of shoes or not go through the useful life of one and then get your other pair, that would be really helpful. But there's one thing here, is that the shoes you get, or the shoes you're rotating, need to be different in their qualities, meaning that they should have different stack heights, they should have different heel drops, and they should have different firmness of their foams. All of these things can change the biomechanics of our running stride, and therefore can be really helpful in distributing the forces differently while we're running. And so once again, different heel drops, different stack heights, and different foam firmnesses can all contribute to different mechanics when we run. So just to review, we have an almost 40% reduction in running related injuries if you have multiple pairs of shoes. Make sure that your shoes have different characteristics as far as stack heights, firmness, and heel drops. And be sure to also try to cross-train if you can, once again, to distribute the forces differently throughout your legs. Thanks for following, and please leave your comments or questions below. Thanks.